There have been a plethora of xenomorph hybrids. I mean, from ape-like xenos to fish-like xenos. There's hardly a class of animals that the xenomorphs have not merged with. In Batman Aliens 2, we saw a whole bunch of xenomorphs who were base created by splicing the DNA of members from Batman's rogues gallery, members like Joker, Poison Ivy, Harvey Dent, and more. However, the most powerful of these was the hybrid spliced from the DNA of Killer-Croc. As you could probably imagine, this dude was the definition of super in supervillain and would have wreaked immense havoc, if not stopped. Although the Killer-Croc Xenomorph appeared in the very climax of the miniseries, exploring the entire comic for that uber exciting and high-octane part is totally worth it. In this video, we will briefly explore the Batman Aliens 2 to understand the origin of this magnificent beast and its powers and abilities. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you, let's begin. Technically, the story of Batman Aliens 2 begins in the year 1927, when a rich university professor and collector of ancient artifacts gets his hand on the map to a continental landmass beneath Antarctica before it's engulfed with ice. He took the 14th century Dutch copy of a lost Phoenician transcript and embarked on a journey which he believed would find the true origin of mankind, something that would prove that all humans were, in fact, beings of existential godhood instead of being akin to apes. A few months later, on January 10, 1928, he left with several of his students to Mount Erebus, the southernmost active volcano on Earth. 8 days later, the expedition had reached its destination, and thankfully for the team, volcanic activity had opened the entrance for them. Inside, they found a structure of such complexity and design, it predated all existing human endeavors. The expeditionists had taken a few samples of the container-like artifacts, which were actually ovomorphs, which had frozen into hibernation, but once they thawed, facehuggers started coming out of their temporary homes and attacking humans, latching onto their faces and transferring the mutating agents down their throats. The chestburster didn't take long to erupt, and within 3 days, everyone except the professor and a man named Gregory Hudson was either dead or about to die, and xenomorphs were running amok. The professor knew that Hudson was in favor of killing each and every individual who had the risk of becoming a xenomorph host, and Hudson did exactly that. Once everyone had been eliminated, he came to the professor so that they could leave the place as soon as possible before blowing up the cave to kill or trap the xenomorphs. But the professor thought Hudson would kill him as well. He attacked Hudson and escaped. On the other hand, Hudson battled xenomorphs, but seemed to have escaped the ticking time bomb's wrath. The frostbitten professor was found by a ship's crew on March 2, 1928, at least 10 days after he and Hudson parted ways. Interestingly, he had managed to retrieve a jar with a facehugger inside and brought it to his lab, situated under Gotham City itself. He was of the opinion that when his colleagues were kissed by facehuggers, they had forcibly been evolved into higher life forms, proxies of our older godlike selves, so he allowed the facehugger to latch itself onto his face. What a dumb move, Professor, what a dumb move. And that's how xenomorphs made their way to Gotham. Batman meets the xenomorphs again. 70 years later, we find ourselves back in Gotham. The men of a firm named DeCristo Constructions were hard at work when they found something extremely peculiar. They stopped to call in Stephen DeCristo, the firm's owner, who left a dinner with the governor and high rollers like Bruce Wayne to check out what the discovery was. They had found a basement that felt more well-guarded than the Fortress of Solitude. The brickwork was 6 feet deep, braced with iron bands, and backed with what looked like riveted ship's plates. DeCristo Constructions was contracted to clear the area, but this was a major hiccup, one like the immovable object Joker used to talk about. Anyway, the only point in the structure that was relatively weaker than the rest was the door. They loosened the frame with strong acid before hammering the damn thing down. Inside, they find a place reminiscent of Frankenstein's lab, but the horror it packed was way more fatal than Frankenstein's monster. A xenomorph had been in the chamber waiting to be unleashed, and DeCristo and his men had given it that opportunity. The creature attacked and annihilated everyone. As would be expected, the massacre drew Batman's attention, who also knew that DeCristo had been missing from the gala dinner. The crime scene was nothing less than an elegant mess of blood, bones, and everything gory. Gordon was at the scene and was surprised because the hit looked like it was carried out by using automatic chainsaws, and the men had quite literally been torn apart. Inside, they find the body of the professor. The corpse had not decomposed as there was little to no aerobic activity activity in the room, but the giant exit wound on his chest suggested that it had exploded inside out. And while Gordon wasn't sure what it was, Batman's worst fears since losing his parents were coming true. Additionally, Batman and Gordon found stuff reminiscent of a xenomorph hive. Batman went straight to the cave to study the journal he had found at the crime scene and returned to Gordon with the news. Gordon was clearly shocked and scared to his bones. I mean, his city had just opened its doors to apex murder machines who lived to kill and killed to live. He called in the federal authorities and the Center for Disease Control. Gordon's men were failing spectacularly at finding the xenomorph, but the creature attacked the 9th Street subway station, which was a spur branching off the main city line, and it ran along the De Cristo construction site. Well, the xenomorph had been right beneath their feet all the time. Anyway, Batman entered the subway only to find that the biometallic monster had cocooned several people to the wall, but there was more than one of those slimy beasts there. The duel between Batman and xenomorphs was nothing short of high octane. In fact, at one point in time, he was actually fist fighting the Xenos. I'm not sure if it was his skills and gadgets that saved him, or his plot armor, but he managed to walk out of the place, albeit with torn clothes, but no real injury. But he knew that Gotham's worries had just begun because he had seen several face-hugged people. A human-queen hybrid, Batman saved the 3 men from a fate worse than death by bringing them to a hospital, where the doctors removed the chest bursters before they could do their thing. You know, the whole bursting out of the chest stuff. But Gordon and Batman meet someone strange in the form of one Dr. Catherine Fortune. She posed as a government agent, but even Batman, the world's greatest detective, couldn't find out who she was. One major reason behind this was that he didn't quite read the comic he was in, but I did. So remember the expedition to Antarctica? Well, Catherine was part of that expedition and was implanted with a queen chestburster embryo. However, she had a mild case of dry leprosy, and the chestburster could never reach its final stage of growth. So basically, the queen chestburster was thriving inside of her. This gave her enhanced physical strength, heightened instincts, quick reflexes, and extremely slow aging. Her skills attracted the attention of the military during the war, and later she became part of a cabal of politicians, religious leaders, and industrialists who wanted to create a superhero deterrent, on the off chance that the superheroes turned against humanity. It was due to this that she started to experiment with her human xenomorph DNA to create spliced xenomorphs. Dr. Fortune successfully made several monsters by splicing the DNAs of monsters from Arkham Asylum and xenomorphs. The first batch of these monsters was created from Harvey Dent, Mr. Freeze, Scarecrow, Poison Ivy, and the Joker. She would add strands of her own DNA into the mix, which would make the resultant hybrids consider her as the mother or queen. After the events of the second issue of the comic, Batman found himself in the research facility of Catherine Fortune, which was actually an abandoned oil rig in the middle of the ocean. However, Batman managed to eliminate all the hybrids, and he confronted Catherine. Catherine's men opened fire at him, and the crossfire freed a 6th hybrid, one created by using the DNA of Killer-Croc. However, she had not used her own DNA to create the Killer-Croc Xenomorph. She believed that the creature wouldn't hurt her, but she couldn't be more wrong. The Killer-Croc Xenomorph was a horrific green monstrosity that didn't share the human instincts as the other Arkham Asylum hybrids did, and it didn't even obey her orders. You see, a xenomorph from one hive considers that of another hive to be a greater threat than anyone else. Furthermore, Killer-Croc as a supervillain wasn't traumatized, and his feral instincts were as base and primal as they come. So the Killer-Croc hybrid wasted no time finishing off Catherine Fortune with a head bite. Seeing this, Catherine's men fired at the Killer-Croc Xenomorph. There was a massive explosion in the facility that was caused by the gunfire. Batman was practically getting cooked in there, and would have perished if he didn't make an escape. As Batman tried to find a way out, the Killer-Croc Xeno followed him. But thankfully for Batman, the opening through which he escaped was not big enough for the massive Xenomorph. As he jumped into the water, he saw stealth models of attack helicopters that had arrived to destroy the oil rig and destroy all evidence, another dirty secret never to be told. Marvelous verdict. Although the Killer-Croc Xenomorph appeared only for a brief period, it was one of the most powerful aliens that I've explored. And if you're a regular at Marvelous videos, you'd know that I have explored quite a few of them. This guy was almost as big as a queen, and probably twice as powerful. Since it was based on Killer-Croc, there was a high chance that it could even swim, unlike the run-of-the-mill Xenomorphs. Good thing then that it was destroyed. If you're interested in Xenomorphs and the Alien franchise, I suggest you explore our playlist on the subject. It's got awesome content explaining things like the real purpose of xenomorphs and more. Oh, and I think it's clear that the Killer-Croc alien is very different from the Xeno-Croc that appeared in the first crossover between Alien and Batman. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone!